Algebra 2, welcome to day 2 of the Quadratic Formula playlist. We are going to be adding on to our notes, which means you should be between pages 48 and 51 and should be taking all of these notes. Everything I write down, you should be writing down as well. We're going to start off today with a little bit of practice simplifying square roots. So we did do some simplifying square roots before we started the quadratic formula. You can see these ones look very similar to the quadratic formula. So they're going to be good practice to help us be able to make it all the way through the quadratic formula. So let's start with number 1. Number 1, we have 8 plus or minus the square root of 96 over 4. If you need to, pause the video and get this all copied down so you don't have to do it while I talk. So 8 plus or minus the square root of 96 over 4. Remember, the big thing here is we need to simplify our square root before we do anything else. When we simplify a square root, we're going to list out perfect squares. So we have 4, 9, 16, 25, 36, 49, 64, 81, and we can stop because next would be 100, and we don't want to go over 96. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to divide 96 by our perfect squares, starting with the biggest. So let's try. 96 divided by 81 gives us a gross, nasty, yucky decimal. Cross it off. Next, divide by 64 gives us 1.5. That's a decimal. Yucky, yucky. Divide by 49 gives us 1.95. Still a decimal. We must be getting there soon. Let's try dividing by 36. 2.6667. Not quite. Let's try to divide by 25. 3.84. Still a nasty decimal. Let's try 16. Will he be our winner? Yes, indeed. When we divide 96 by 16, we get a nice even whole number 6, which means we should split that up. So we're going to take this square root 96 and split it up into 16 times 6. We're going to go even further and split up this into square root 16, square root 6. What's awesome is we all know what the square root of 16 is. The square root of 16 is 4. So we're going to write 4 square root 6. 4 square root 6. So we're going to rewrite this entire problem, but replace square root of 96 with what we just simplified, 4 square root of 6. So we have 8 plus or minus the square root, I forgot my 4, plus or minus 4 square root of 6 all over 4. Okay, but we're not done yet, because remember, we can see that we have a 4 in the denominator, which means we might be able to simplify this fraction. So I'm going to highlight all of our numbers that are not under the square root. We have 8, 4, and 4. What number can I divide 8, 4, and 4 by? Well, I can definitely divide them by 2, but I can also divide all of them by 4. So I'm going to simplify this by dividing everything by 4. 8 divided by 4 is 2. 4 divided by 4 is 1. And the bottom 4 divided by 4 is also 1. Whenever you have a 1 in the denominator, you don't even need it. So let's get rid of it. So I am left with 2 plus or minus 1 times the square root of 6, or 2 plus or minus the square root of 6. And this is now as simplified as we can get. And if you recall from yesterday's notes, the plus or minus just means this is 2 plus the square root of 6 and 2 minus the square root of 6. We have two answers, but mathematicians are lazy, so they came up with a symbol that means both plus and minus. Number 2, make sure you have it copied down on your paper. Let's simplify 4 plus or minus the square root of 36 over 2. So we have to simplify the square root of 36, and look at that. Oh, that's so nice, because look at 36 is already a perfect square. So we don't have to make a list. We don't have to try to divide out any numbers. We know the square root of 36 is 6. So we have 4 plus or minus this, not square root, 4 plus or minus 6 over 2. Just like before, even though there's no more square root, I'm going to see if I can simplify. So I'm going to highlight my 3 numbers that aren't under the square root, because we have no square root, and I'm going to ask myself, can I divide all of these by anything? And I can. I can divide 4 by 2, 6 by 2, and 2 by 2. I know that 4 divided by 2 is 2. I know 6 divided by 2 is 3. And I know 2 divided by 2 is 1. Like we said before, if there's a 1 in the bottom of our fraction, we don't even need it. And we have 2 plus or minus 3. But we can go farther because this is the same thing as 2 plus 3 and 2 minus 3, which is simple math. 2 plus 3 is 5. 2 minus 3 is negative 1. So we could simplify all the way down to 5 and negative 1. Look at that. We got whole numbers. That sometimes can happen. Okay, so now that you guys got a little bit of refresher, this is how we simplify these square roots, which is something you're going to have to do when you use the quadratic formula. And we're about to see it in our first example. So let's get back at it. So we are going to solve this quadratic using the quadratic formula. And if you don't remember the quadratic formula and didn't copy it down in your notes, I have it in the bottom right corner so you can copy it down. You need that somewhere, as many places as possible. I have the quadratic 0 equals x squared plus 6x minus 10. What I need you guys to do is pause the video and get all of this copied down so you can pay attention while we solve this problem. All right, we're all copied down. Let's do the quadratic formula. If you remember, we don't have to worry about pulling stuff out. We don't have to do our x method. We're just going to get ready and plug everything into our quadratic formula. We need to have our a, b, and c value. So my a value, invisible 1. My b value, 6. And my c value, don't forget, negative 10. After I have my a, b, and c, all I need to do is plug all of it into my quadratic formula. I have 2 b's, 2 a's, and a c. I always start out by writing out my quadratic formula with parentheses, so I make sure I don't forget any of my signs. So x equals negative, parentheses, plus or minus the square root, b squared, parentheses, squared, minus 4 times a times c. 4 times, we're going to need to put an a there, put a c there, all over 2 times a. So I need to make sure I put parentheses there. So now we're going to go and plug everything in. My first set of parentheses is my b value. So I'm going to plug in b, 6. My second set of parentheses is also b. So I'm going to plug in another 6. Next, I have an a value, so I'm going to plug in my 1, which is a. My next one is c, so I'm going to plug in my negative 10. Last one on the bottom is a, so I better change over to red and plug in my 1. So we've plugged in our a, b, and c values into our quadratic formula. Here's the part where let's not make things too difficult. Let's highlight everything that's underneath our square root. We're going to highlight everything under that square root, and we're just going to put it into Desmos, because Desmos is an awesome tool that can simplify this, and we just have to make sure we type it in right. So let's type it in. 6 squared minus 4 times 1 and times negative 10. And if you notice, I'm plugging it in exactly how I wrote it on my paper. I have my parentheses, all of my subtractions. I didn't forget anything. I'm going to double check quick. And look, did I forget anything? 6 squared minus 4, 1, negative 10. We're all good. All of that highlighted yellow simplifies to 76. So I'm going to rewrite my problem with the square root of 76 instead of all of this mumbo jumbo. So let's do that. switch over to black. X equals negative times 6 is negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 76. Let's make sure, yes, 76. All over 2 times 1, which is just 2. Awesome. So, what I need to do now is just like what we did at the beginning. We need to make sure that this is simplified. So I need to make sure that see and check if I can simplify the square root of 76. So I'm going to make my list. I have 4, 9, 16, 25. Are you getting good at your list? 36, 49. Ooh, we have to keep going. 64. Next would be 81, so we can stop. We don't need to go over 76. So you're going to take out your calculator, and we're going to start checking. We want to find what's the biggest perfect square we can divide 76 by. We're going to start on the top of from the top. So we have 76 divided by 64. Ew, nasty. That's a decimal. We're going to do 76 divided by 49. Ugh, 1.55, that's gross. Not that one. Divide by 36, 2.11111111 forever and ever. Yuck, gross. Can we do 25? Let's see. 3.04. That's still gross. 16? Still gross. 4.75. 9. 8.44. 4. Oh my gosh, we finally got it. We can divide it by 4. 76 divided by 4 is 19. We can finally break this up. So the square root of 76 breaks up into 19 times 4. 4 times 19. We're going to go one step farther and split this into the square root of 4, square root of 19. We know the square root of 4, don't we? That's 2. So this is 2 square root 19. Okay, if you need to, remember, pause the video. Make sure you have everything. So we simplified the square root of 76 down to 2 square root of 19. So I'm going to rewrite this, but instead of 76, I'm going to use 2 square root of 19. So I have x equals negative 6 plus or minus 2 times the square root of 19 all over 2. Okay, we're going from here to here. Okay, remember, once we're here, we need to check our numbers and see if we can simplify or reduce our fractions. The numbers I have that are naked and they have no square root are negative 6, 2, and 2. So we think to ourselves, what can I take out of negative 6, 2, and 2? Well, I can take a 2 out of all of them. So let's divide all of them by 2. X equals negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. 2 divided by 2 is 1. Don't forget that square root 19. 2 divided by 2 is 1. What do we do, though? If we have a denominator with a 1, we don't even need that. We can get rid of it. What else can I erase? There's something else. Ah, you're right. I can erase this 1, too. So this is my answer. Negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 19. Okay, we'll leave it like that. Remember, that's actually 2 answers. Negative 3 plus the square root of 19, and negative 3 minus the square root of 19. But mathematicians are lazy, so we just write plus minus, which means both. Okay, make sure you have all this down, because we have another problem to get done. Okay, let's go again. Solving using the quadratic formula. Again, I have the quadratic sitting there in the bottom right. If you don't have that written down yet, gosh, get it written down. Come on. Okay, so let's solve using the quadratic formula. So we have 0 equals 9x squared plus 3x minus 2. Pause the video, get this all copied down so you can follow along. All right, so we start off, we need our A, B, and C. A is 9. My B value is 3. And my C value is negative 2. So we have A, B, and C. We get to jump right into plugging this in. So let's write it out. X equals negative B. So let's put parentheses, plus or minus the square root of b squared, so we need parentheses, minus 4 times a times c. Again, I think it's super important you put these parentheses because people love to forget the minuses and then it gets all messed up. And then when you try to put it in the Desmos, it gets all messed up. So take this time and put in your parentheses into your quadratic formula. Okay, let's put everything in. First, we have two b's. Let's plug them in. B is 3. I'm going to plug in a 3 and a 3. Next, I have an a. Let's plug in my 9. And then I have a c. Plug in your c, negative 2. On the bottom, we have an a. Plug in your a. Always double check. If you plug them into the wrong spot, it's going to mess everything up. So if you need to take a second and just double check, I got my 9 in for my a's, my negative 2 in for c, and my 3 in for my b's. I'm good to go. So here's where we don't even risk it. Let's plug this into Desmos to simplify for us. That way we don't make any silly mistakes and then have to start the whole problem over. So let's plug it in. 3, don't forget to square it, minus 4 times 9 times negative 2. All of that simplifies to 81. All of that simplifies to 81. So I'm going to rewrite this, but replace this square root with all this mumbo jumbo with the square root of 81. So we have x equals negative times 3, negative 3. We are going to replace that with the square root of 81. On the bottom, we have 2 times 9, which is 18. Awesome. Look at how much better it looks. Okay, you know the deal. We need to simplify our square root, and wow, we are lucky today because the square root of 81, that's easy. What is the square root of 81? Well, it's 9. 9 times 9 is 81. So we can just already go ahead and rewrite this as x equals negative 3 plus or minus square root of 81 is 9 over 18. Okay? Now let's ask ourselves, what can I divide out of all three numbers? What can I take anything out of negative 3, 9, and 18? You're right, I can take out a 3. Let's divide them all by 3. Negative 3 divided by 3 is negative 1. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 18 divided by 3 is 6. Awesome. Okay, so we actually can go even farther. Since there's no square root, we can actually figure out what our values are. So let's see. This is negative 1 plus 3 over 6 and negative 1 minus 3 over 6. Negative 1 plus 3 is 2 over 6. Negative 1 minus 3 is negative 4 over 6. Wow, so we have 2 over 6 and negative 4 over 6. But guess what? Those definitely can be reduced. Just like when we did the x method, I can plug in my fractions, 2 over 6, click my fraction button, and it simplifies. Negative 4 over 6, click my fraction button, and there's my simplified fractions, 1/3 and negative 2/3. 1/3, running out of room, negative 2/3. Those are the solutions to the quadratic formula. And you notice, you're like, whoa, we actually got whole numbers this time. That's because this problem, you could have solved this by factoring or using the x method. Because we got real numbers or rational numbers, we actually didn't even need to use the quadratic formula. But like we said yesterday, the quadratic formula always works. So if you're a big fan of the quadratic formula, you can always use this method if you don't like to do the x method. Okay, so that's the end of our examples for today. You should have, sorry, my headset died. You should have 1, 2, 3, 4 problems in your notes between pages 48 to 51. Get all of this done. Submit a picture. And that's the end of day 2. You guys have a good one. And I'll see you tomorrow for day 3.